So first of all, thanks a lot for having us today. It's a great pleasure presenting our work today to you. So my name is Anna Shvets. I'm a researcher in generative AI at Fab Lab in Paris. And for those of you who was present, sorry, during the event yesterday, the Music and AI, you might have seen what kind of research I lead at the lab. But today I'm in another role. I'm a composer and music producer in this project. And together with my collaborator, Samir Darkazanli, who's a programmer at the French informatics company AMSI, we will present to you our new projects in the VR. So first of all, let's start with the context. Okay. So in order to understand the novelty of our project, we'll start with a quick overview of the preceding conditions and the current context, which will lead us to the definition of a new genre. The development of music notation practices, as well as analytical music representations, went into direction of dimensionality augmentation. So the geometry of music by Dmitry Temechko uses the three-dimensional space of four-chord relations representation, while hyperspheres by Gilles Baron adds the first dimension to the music representation. We see similar tendencies in recent digital art development with a spatial distribution of the constructive elements belonging to a painting perceived as the 2D art. So here we can see a painter that paints in the VR, and then we have a whole picture of that. On the other hand, the VR rapidly penetrates into the film industry with the VR section present at major film festival, music, dance, and theater festivals, not to mention the dedicated digital art and VR festivals. With this increasing presence of the VR technology in the media industry, what will be the place of music art in this emerging realm? Will it be simply subordinated to the image, or will the music use visuals to stress and amplify its own means of expression? Recently appeared Music XR branch of research defines the criteria which the VR application must meet in order to be considered as belonging to Music XR. Thus, the application being considered as Music XR, the element of the music must be accessible in interactive manner with the possibility of manipulation of the level of pitch, timbre, or rhythm. In this paper, we propose the next level of music manipulation through interaction, which embraces music structure level. Given the context, we propose a definition of volumetric composition. The concept which represents a piece of music, the constructive elements of which are distributed in 3D space, either physical or visual, allowing the user to interact with each of these elements in a linear or non-linear manner. In this presentation, we will show both the linear and nonlinear strategies of the implementation of this concept in a VR environment. So let's start with our first project. The project inspiration came from the semantic duality of names given by John Herschel to the Messier 70 nebula in 1833 and 1837. The drawing displayed on the screen here was made in 1833, and the visual shapes decided for its name, the Swan Nebula, because it's similar to the shape of this bird. Then 4 years later, another drawing was made with the more powerful telescope, which revealed additional stars, and the second name was given. So here were the additional stars. The second name that was Omega, because now this nebula had another visual shape. The semantic connotation of both nebula names is cardinal opposite, as the symbol of eternal beauty swan is opposed to the fatality related to the omega symbol. This way emerged the main idea of the music composition, which I composed, expressing the artistic aspiration to the eternal beauty and the finality of human existence. This drawing also inspired the placement of the interactive elements to realize the interactivity and non-linearity aspects in the VR project. Since the visual representation includes not only shades but colors as well, we stayed consistent with the source of inspiration and took the scientific colors visualization of the massive 17 nebula made by Hubble. So here you have the image as our starting point. As we can see, the shades of blue and red prevail, perfectly matching the semantic meanings we are looking forward to implement, the celestial eternal blue with the fatal red. Thus, the shape of the blue here on the drawing represented the swan path, and the shade of the red represented the omega path. The shading itself represented the stages of the development. So here it's less intense, and then it's more intense. Which corresponds, the desiccation color goes toward the end of the music path. As the music of both paths relies on a strophic form, it allows interchangeability of the stages of development, supported by a common harmonic signature and a similar temporal organization between two paths. So you can start with one path and go to another and switch between them back and forth. Okay, Sam, you to go.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having us. So the VR application was developed using Unity 3D for the second edition of the MetaQuest VR headset. The pre-interaction parts contains time and movement indices. They help the user trigger the right compositional elements that we call artifacts in order to interactively compose a piece. So a semi-transparent sphere indicates both of the next artifact to trigger and the delay before the interaction. A circular time indicator staying at the user's view field shows the remaining time before interacting with the next artifact. And as a consequence of the user interactions, the colors and shades of the triggered artifacts affect the shades of the surrounding virtual space. And the user's hand gestures are visualized with semi-transparent trails, gradually fading away. Let's move to the demo part. So this user experience video is recorded by the VR device. The user's hands are handled by controllers, which appear as hands. He or she can move within the VR gradient space to interact with the objects. The red and blue spheres represent the artifacts. They are placed as shapes of the Swan and Omega constellations. The surrounding virtual space reacts to the user's interactions with the artifact. When the hands move, trails are created while clouds appear. And the user can use his imagination to create movements within the virtual world while triggering the artifacts and while the effects evolve.
Okay, so unlike Omega, Atmos proposes a linear strategy of realization of the volumetric music composition, as the structure is much detailed and sound changes are subtler. The determinants of linearity is compensated by the freedom of the element's choice the user may interact with. Thus, the user might skip the interaction with the composition element at a given time step, creating lighter sounding version of the piece. The loops with the ambient and atmospheric sounding available in the stock collection of the audio samples from Ableton Live 10 digital audio workstation served as the music material for this composition. The user audio material decided for the composition title and the visual organization. The visual set of specialized compositional elements derives from the compositional structure, music composition structure. Eternally form with the combined elements in the last section. So here you have the ternary form, which might be expressed alphabetically as A, B, and then the combination of both. The ternary music form is graphically represented in a binary combination of figures. The form of the cube here represents, embraces the sonorization of the first two sections, and the double pyramid inside corresponds to the last section. The choice of the color of the compositional elements is arbitrary. However, as in case of the Omega project, it also affects the surrounding space colorization. So we also have these these changes in the sky depending on what color the interactive element we just touched. The dancer's hand gestures are predetermined by the succession of points to trigger, creating general modes of movement, such as circular movement or cross movement. So here we have we can see the succession of those points to trigger that creates those cross movements or circular movements that dancer follows. As the details of the implementation for this VR experience are similar as for the Omega project, let's move to the demo directly.
So the color spheres represent the artifacts placed in the cube containing the pyramid shape. And as we can see, the interaction is similar to the Omega experience. And we are actually thinking of future enhancements for the experience, such as using VR hands, for example, to make the movements more realistic and the interaction different.
Okay, let's find where the starts our another element. Yeah, here we, for example, interact related with the pyramid. Okay. So the results of the user experience validation were gathered using the questionnaire after the Omega project exposition at Sœurs Jumelles Music Festival that took place just last month. Yeah, so we had the projection of the project during 4 days at the festival. The satisfaction form filled by 28 participants with the age distribution that you can see on the screen. We had almost balanced gender representation, and the majority of our participants had no or little experience in the VR, so they were really novices. We proposed a Likert scheme going from 1 to 5 to evaluate different aspects of the application content. And as we can see, the evaluation was very positive. We had more excellent and prevailing excellent and good estimations than medium ones. Okay, so we also tried to see how the interactivity was perceived by the users. For that, we asked questions. What would be your experience of this music if it was proposed in a classical concert setting without VR, and whether the interactivity was beneficial, proposing 3 options to answer: better, same, or worse. It's interesting that the number of participants that added their own number, own option different. So they didn't think that it would be better or worse without VR or the same without VR, just they say different. And it was amazing that they were not at all correlated between them. So they had no possibility to communicate between them. So this was really the collective intelligence about that. And the 82% actually responded that the interactivity adds value to the perception of this musical structure or this project. And among the numerous positive feedbacks that we received, I've chosen 3 that show how the users felt immersed in another world, which was actually our ultimate goal. So that's kind of good stuff. Okay, so conclusions. Oh, sorry. It was fast. To that, it returned me to the beginning. Just before that, yeah, thanks. We presented so far a concept of volumetric music composition along with its practical application in a VR application, the modes of interaction with the surrounding response, either musically or visually, the results of the concept validation through user feedback. In summary, the project presents a great potential for co-creation of hybrid VR experience of music art. And we thank you for your attention. And in case you'd like to collaborate with us, we provide our contacts here. And the QR code leads to the page that is dedicated to the volumetric music composition, containing video recordings of the implementation that we've partly shown here. Otherwise, the link is also available in the paper. So thank you very much. We are looking forward to hear your questions.